Black waiters of Reddit. What is the most racist experience from customers you face during your job? Not even joking. Guy straight up tells my manager that he'd rather have a white server. My white co-worker saw I was pretty upset and made me a chocolate chip cookie. I think it was a pretty good trade edit. Technically I didn't have to switch with my co-worker. My manager told the guy that's not how it works and that he could certainly leave. He decided to stay. Once I found out what the guy said, I made an executive decision to not let this butthole ruin my day. That's when I asked my co-worker if she would switch tables with me. She obliged and then made me a cookie. This why I can never understand racism. Here, I have a straight up dickhead guy, and then my co-worker is as nice as they come. Two people of the same race with polar opposite personality. How can you determine millions of people act the same when you interact with less than 1% of them? Edit 2. For people wondering why it was only one cookie, my co-worker took a bunch of cookie dough and made one massive cookie that was wider than my face. Then she put some ice cream on it and some chocolate syrup with a cherry. Had to eat it with a spoon. It was really good actually. If I had to choose between prejudice and giant cookies, I'm choosing giant cookies every time. I don't have the patience for people who are unable to do even the smallest amount of self-evaluation. I'm black and I used to wait tables. I never had a customer be overtly racist with me. I'm glad that you asked the question though. Being black on Reddit is almost like being invisible. And being black and acknowledging racism is even a thing that is enacted against us is often very unpopular in our post-racial society. Shout out to all the chill white people that were nice to me while I was taking your orders and duck my boss though. The owner and majority of the other staff at that restaurant was racist as duck. Edit. Everyone keeps misinterpreting this thing I said about invisibility. It's not me that is invisible. It's content that I can relate to based on my experience as a black dude in real life. It's an absence of many other black voices. Sure, I can't tell what anyone else is and you can't tell what I am because it's just words. But still there is an absence that you can feel. I don't know how to explain it to someone in the majority group. But other POC and women in this thread pointed out too. It's okay. It doesn't bother me. I don't need my identity on blast in every comment. I was just thanking OP for bringing up the subject because I found it refreshing. I'm sorry I didn't word that correctly. I'm speaking of questions like this. Edit number 2. Thanks for the gold. Never actually met any crazy racist ducks when I used to wait tables. Most people were just really glad I spoke English as a first language. Now, the crazy racist poop happened when I used to sell higher end shoes at Macy's in the rich white part of town. There were people that asked directly if there was anyone white that could help them. There were a lot of people that got a kick out of letting me know that I would never be allowed in such a store when they were young because segregation. Mostly, their other subtle racist bitches would come up to my counter using big words and act surprised that I understood. Purposely ask for complex change then act all stunned I could figure it out in my head. Lots of compliments about how well spoken and smart I seemed. Constantly getting accused of being sassy, having a bad attitude and rolling my eyes when an obviously wrong customer couldn't get their way. Never mind that I was simply following store policies and the camera at my register clearly shows no such reaction occurred. Then there are the ones that went on fancy trips and want to have a brag while they are shopping and do their best to make you feel uncultured. Duck that. I read books. Both my cousin and I work as waitresses at the same independent senior living center. Needless to say the residence always confuses us for each other. But one time a resident brought in her daughter for lunch who insisted I was the waitress that took their order and was hassling me about when her food would come out. I managed to get away but when my cousin goes to check on that table the daughter demands to know why she was such a dumb nigger and couldn't do a simple job. My cousin walked away and told our supervisor calmly if the resident's daughter was not escorted out she would quit. It was the most racist thing I had ever seen and still makes my cousin mad whenever it's mentioned. Besides the rare racist remark, I get more times than not a big thank you and a lot of praise for seeming educated and on top of things. Some people give me huge tips like $20. I'm not complaining about that but they'll say stuff like just a little something to keep you on track. Good luck. I just don't get it. Do I look like I need your money? LOL. Not me exactly, but I worked in a Japanese restaurant and one day someone asked to talk to a manager because they were having trouble understanding the server. My manager, who spoke excellent English not perfect, went over and the woman took one look at her and pointed to me, white young male, and said give me someone who speaks some damn English. I came over and calmly asked her, in English, to get the hell out. I've been waiting tables to pay for life as I work on my BS degree. I live in the Midwest and the people here are known for being nice, so I've rarely experienced blatant racism. I do, however, experience the blissfully ignorant type racism on a daily basis. I always get, you're surprisingly well spoken and well mannered. Is that your real hair? You don't have an accent. Here's an extra tip. Buy the kid something nice. I have no children. My coworker. You're not like other black people. You're not sassy. And you're really nice. Midwesterners are just so darn cute. Not a customer exactly, but my manager turned to me once during the middle of a dinner rush and asked me why I didn't act like those other black people, which I took to mean that she was surprised with my ability to speak and carry myself in a way that you deem appropriate for being out in society. We were dealing with a large group of women who were in town for a conference for their historically African American sorority, and they were being entitled bitches to be sure, but there was very little correlation between their race and their entitled attitudes. They were just being middle to upper middle class sorority alumni who just so happened to favor a few words from the Ebonic vocabulary. I smiled politely, shrugged emphatically, and made lots of non-committal squeaking noises in the hopes that I wouldn't have to call her out for being ignorant as duck in front of a restaurant full of customers. I was hosting at a Ruby Tuesdays when a family came in and requested a table. There was a wait, and instead of waiting where everyone else was, they went back to their hotel room. Restaurant was attached to a hotel. They are up and I am loudly calling their name and searching for them walking around the joint. They come back a few minutes after I gave up and sat another table. They complained that I didn't look hard enough or check with the hotel desk to call their room, which is something we never did. You want a table? Sit in the waiting area or go to the bar. That's where we look. They started yelling at me saying that although I looked like a monkey, I sure as hell was dumber than one. Other guests jumped in saying that I clearly looked, called out their name audibly, but they were nowhere to be found. The guy gave no ducks and demanded I fetch my manager. My manager just so happened to be black as well, and when a guest told him that the guy made some monkey comments, he told them they were not welcome in the restaurant for the duration of their stay at the hotel. Oh wow, shout out to the other guests for sticking up for you. Most people tend to avoid getting involved. In Brown, I delivered pizza to a family I had delivered there before, and the little kid, maybe like 6 years old, says I am surprised he speaks English. His older brother, 11 maybe, told him to shut up. I've seen the dad, construction work type, always with a look on his face, assuming the kid heard his father talking about me. Duck him. When working as an expediter at a popular chain restaurant, one of my coworkers was serving this older black gentleman some soup. When my coworker put the soup on the table, the man simply looked at him and said cracker. This bartender, who was not obviously Hispanic, turns to him and without missing a beat and says, would you like some, or are you easily confused in your old age? The look on his face was priceless. The man apologized immediately for how he phrased his request. However, oddly enough, the people who were the most racist towards black people at that job were black employees. I'm a waitress, and the only co-workers who complain about black customers are black themselves. They tell me it's not racist because they are also black, so they say it's okay that they will refuse every black family because they don't tip. I get that a lot, too, but from friends. I'm half black white, and maybe 1/4 of the new people that I meet will ask why I don't act black or will try to claim me as their black friend lols, which makes me drop them almost immediately. Can I just be myself? Can everyone else do the same respectfully? Could you just shut your mouth forever? Thanks. I've worked several serving jobs, and there is so much racism in the service industry. Most of the most vile offenders seem to be large groups, as if they draw support and courage for their behavior from their numbers. Sadly, it was determined that things run much more smoothly if parties and their waiters are of similar ethnicity and were usually seated accordingly. Not currently a waiter, but I used to work at a pizza place where I interacted with people. I don't think I ever had an issue with customers being racist, but it was my manager. It was never straight out racism, but you could tell. For example, a white co-worker dropped a stack of dishes in the kitchen, and he told me to clean it up. I was always the first one he blamed for things. I always had to clean the bathroom. Money went missing from the register at one point. I was blamed. I wasn't working at the register, so he couldn't prove anything, but I still wasn't allowed to work at the register. It was things like that. That was all years ago, and I've done pretty well for myself, but I still have to deal with this kind of thing. Currently at my company, I'm the only black employee at my level. I have people under me and there are a few that you can tell don't like having to do what a black person says. They'll scowl or roll eyes when I give them tasks, not take me seriously. Maybe they don't like me for me, or maybe it's my skin color. I'm not totally certain. I'll tell you this though. One time I actually did fire a man for racism against a coworker. It was probably my favorite day at the office ever. That sounds like a story. I'm not a server, although I work in a service industry, law enforcement. I was helping an elderly gentleman with some paperwork associated with a vehicle release. His hearing must have been on the way out because he very loudly whispered by gosh, a N-word in a uniform. It takes a lot to stun me, but I'm pretty sure my chin hit the floor. I decided to kill him with kindness and go above and beyond. I figure that fighting hate with hate only leads to more hate. With that in mind, I waive his paperwork fees, but before letting him leave on his way I tell him it's black guy in a uniform. Then his jaw dropped. He apologized and went on his way. Hey, I figure he was having a bad day and didn't take it personally. Edit. My first gold. Thank you kind stranger. I'm honored. I worked at a shoe store and had a white lady come in asking if a certain pair of Nike shoes were for blacks. I told her they were shoes, and I've never met a pair of racist shoes. She said, I just don't want my daughter wearing Nike shoes. I made her leave after that. I don't get some people. Who the duck cares about what race wears what shoes? If you like the shoes then buy the damn shoes. A coworker told me a white gentleman told him that me serving him made the food taste worse. Okay, well it's going to be long. So there was a gentleman who worked in my department who we will call Jimmy. Jimmy was one of the people who may have had a bit of a problem with me, but I wasn't certain. Anyway, I had hired a Sikh man, we'll call him Tom, who came very highly recommended. Great references, good degree, lots of experience. He was an obvious choice for the job. Anyway, on the Tom's first day, Jimmy comes into my office and asks if it's safe to have him around. I was confused and Jimmy explained his fear. It turns out Jimmy does not know the difference between Muslims and Sikhs. I explain this, and include that Tom has an Ivy League degree, and was born in Michigan. He's not a threat, and I send him to HR for them to continue. A few weeks later was the anniversary of 9/11. Jimmy did not come in, and does not call in sick. Tom picks up the slack, does excellently, and I decide to interrogate Jimmy when he comes in next. So the next day Jimmy comes in, I call him into my office and I ask him where he was. Jimmy says that he didn't think it was safe with Tom here and it being the 11th of September. Clearly Jimmy does not grasp that Tom is not a Muslim. Not that it would have mattered if he was. I explain it one more time and ask him what happened at HR last time. He gives a vague answer and I let him go. So I call HR and Jimmy never showed up last time. Not okay. So I call Jimmy back in and we send him to HR. This time I ask them to call me when he shows up. And a few minutes later I get the call. This is getting handled. And I won't have to deal with this anymore. 1 month later Jimmy calls Tom a sand N-word. And some other things about how his cousin was killed in Afghanistan fighting Tom's people. I happen to be within earshot so I call Jimmy into my office. I ask Jimmy once more what he doesn't understand about Tom not being Muslim. Now Jimmy's explanation was poorly explained, but the main point is that Jimmy doesn't believe Sikhs are a real people and that it's a cover for Al-Qaeda. I send Jimmy home for the day, and spent the rest of the day building my case to fire Jimmy. I had been working on it for a while. The next day Jimmy comes in, and I tell him I can't have my employees not working well together. And I tell him that this company will no longer be a good fit for him.